Hello, it's present times Linux here, and I was asked by Rez Zircon. I am going to make sure that is correct. So let me load up Mr. YouTube here. Strangely, I haven't long been watching Lily Allen. Yeah, Lily Savage. So anyway, he wrote this about 17 minutes ago. I know, weird. I would like a slow motion tutorial on setting up a VM, clearly showing every step. So this is what I will do for PCLinuxOS. There are a lot of tutorials, but not with PC loss, and it's easier to follow when it's your home operating system. So I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I fired up simple screen recorder, and let's do this. So we'll open up Mr. Virtualbox, and you see I've already got PC loss there, but that's okay. So we go to new, and we'll just call it PCLinuxOS. One, yeah, that'll do, won't it? It doesn't matter what you put up there. Now, it always defaults to this Linux and Linux 2.6. Right, forget that. Scroll all the way to the bottom. Okay, so you're happy with that? Your machine folder could be anywhere. So actually, I'm going to put it on the SSD because I can. And I have a few empty folders in that last place it looked at. But that's okay. So, yeah, wherever you want the machine, it's normally at the Virtualbox files anyway, but I just use the SSD because it's faster. Whatever. But you can literally place it anywhere with the machine folder where the VM will hold its stuff. And you could create a subfolder called PCLinuxOS1 anyway. So we click next. Next is the recommended memory size. Now it's come up with 512 megabytes. But yeah, although it would run, you won't want to. So I'm going to give it 4 gigabytes, 496 megabytes. PCLinuxOS will run easily between the 512 and anything you want to give it. So if you only want to give it a gigabyte of RAM, if you have unlimited resources, that's also fine. So we'll click next with that. It's going to ask recommended hard disk space is 8. It really isn't. So we'll just create a new disk. I'll leave it on VDI, although any of these 3 will do. But you can just leave this setting unchanged. That's fine. If you don't need to use it with the visualization software, you can leave it as is. VMDK, virtual machine disk, is used with VMware player, etc. will use a VMDK. But it's up to you which you use, but I'll just use a VDI when I'm doing these. You can have it dynamically allocated. Well, it tells you how hard disk will only use space on the physical hard disk so it fills up to a maximum of the fixed size. And although it won't shrink again automatically when space is free. So basically it's a file that will automatically expand up to the size that you're going to give it at the next window. I'm going to give it 18 gig because I'm too lazy to type. And we create the disk. This is where we go in now into the settings. We've set the basic VM up and everything's the same there. We don't need to touch anything on here really. I mean, you can enable bi-directional and all that if you want to have a shared clipboard and drag and drop. This is the place to do it. I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to be drag and dropping from a host to the virtual machine, but some people will need to do that. You can also enable disk encryption if you wish. But I'm just leaving it as it is. We'll go to system. We've already got it at 4 gigabytes, so we don't need to change anything here. We won't be using EFI. It could be just a BIOS boot. We can untick the floppy though, because there is no floppy drive. There isn't even a physical floppy drive on the machine. We will be needing the optical though, and we will be needing the hard disk. So on the processor, we'll give it 2. Use any of the green, don't go into, I can go up to the 4 and use my hyperthreading as well, but it just taxes the machine. It really does. So we'll bring it back down to 2, leave it on the green, and under acceleration I personally use KVM. You can leave it at default or Hyper-V or Legacy, whatever, more minimum, but I like to use KVM. There just seems to be a bit of more snappiness. It might be perceived, it might be just me perceived. Okay, we'll go into the video memory here, and we'll give that a healthy 128 megabytes, although 64 and output will be perfectly fine anyway. We'll leave the graphics controller as VM SVGA. We don't need to turn on 3D, and we don't need to turn on, well, you can't turn on 2D anyway, it's only for Windows. We'll leave the remote and recording alone. So this is where we grab the ISO, and I will use the open one. It is PCLinuxOS, it's the same installer, and we'll click OK, and then at that point we can just start it off. And there we go. Of course, if you are installing another kind of Linux in the drop down box, you may find what you were looking for there, especially if you're on the common Linux. Mandriva would also work for PCLinuxOS if you choose that setting, but I've always chosen myself as Linux and other 64-bit. So anyway, we're at the keyboard stage, which means it's going to be thrown up the X server, and here we are. And I don't have tools, oops, let's try that again. I don't have tools installed, but I can install those on the live, so I can do that anyway. So if I go to applications and Virtualbox, VBox Guest Editions installer, which will install the guest editions for me, although I can go to devices. It's quicker for me to do it this way than for me to go to devices, insert, and then go to the path and run the run file. This script does it all that for you, although it does download the ISO as well for the guest editions. So we'll let that build. In fact, I can go full screen. So I'll go on full screen and just wait for these to build. And it shouldn't take too long, I hope. Famous last words, etc, etc. And it is at this point where I grab a cigarette before I panic. Not really. Okay, it's nearly done, because it always is when it reaches the S bin. There we go. And the script's telling me that it's installed successfully. And you can plainly see that it has. I can now install. And for some reason the installer on OpenBox always opens full screen instead of that size. But that's fine. And we can just play through the installer with gate abandon, as they say. Although I noticed in the last time I did this it didn't give me enough, but it will do now. It's perfectly fine. I gave it 18 gig. So it's computing total size. Next. And it's off installing. Yeah, I paused the video there without saying I was going to. Oops. Anyway, we'll let this carry on. You can count the minutes by. According to the clock in the bottom corner, it's 25 past 7. On Sunday, it isn't. That's Chicago time. So if you're in Chicago, that's what time it was in Chicago when I posted this. But I have the clock set to UTC rather than local time. and the clock out the box is set to Chicago time, because I'll leave the settings as that, as I do. Actually it's probably set to Central now, which is the same time zone, but I could really mix people's heads up and actually have the ISO as GMT or UTC. That would be funny, but yeah. So far it's taken 2 minutes. For some reason the clock decided to jump 2 minutes at a time there, as the clock sometimes does on the Tint 2 panel. But we're all good. The actual time in the UK as of writing this is 1:28 AM. So we're nearly at the end of the install after about 3 minutes. You must excuse me. Just a final little bits to copy over. Now I watched another video earlier with the latest version of PCLinuxOS KDE, and I've noticed he's changed the grub screen and the background for KDE Plasma. I'm still on the old version, although saying that, I'm on the new version, if you see what I mean. No, I changed my own grub screen, I use my own themes. So anyway, yes, we can go to that. I'll just turn off probing, because there's no point. And we'll just wait for this to install, for grub to install. If you do an EFI install of PCLinuxOS on Virtualbox, there is an extra step afterwards you would have to do, because although you can reboot and it would work, on subsequent reboots you'd find that the EFI file, you'd have to hunt for it in the EFI menu. Because it would just help if I tap reboot there, right? Because Virtualbox doesn't do the same as a normal EFI BIOS, I'm afraid. It more or less mimics what HP does, actually, thinking about it. Didn't like it either. So anyway, we can press enter. Once the live CD is removed, I'm not even going to bother removing the ISO from the virtual machine, because it does it automatically. So we're booting up for the first time. And unlike certain other popular OSs, the guest editions actually get copied over with the install, although I installed them before I installed, if that makes any difference. So see, yes, the reason why it jumps left is because of exactly that. So after I've done that, of course I can go to my local time zone, which I happen to skip past every single time. And of course I can put my passwords in, as I do. I don't know why I bother doing this part. I could just have no password, but it's bad thingy. As you can see, the X server is at full screen. And there you go. And the first boot is always slower than any other subsequent boots. And this can be easily ascertained by giving it a quick boot, a reboot. And now that everything's in and in working order, as you can see, although the guest editions haven't quite woken up yet, but they will wake up. Booting is really quite quick, and there she goes. Anyway, that is how you set up for PCLinuxOS on PCLinuxOS, I know, but if you're on Virtualbox, yes. Virtualbox 6 and up. Virtualbox 5 is slightly different because of the graphical differences, and that is all good. Anyway, I'll leave you all in peace. I hope you have a wonderful day, morning, evening, night, and I'm hiccuping a little bit here, and I will see you soon. Have a thumbs up for this video, if not, thumbs down. Zircon, good question. I hope I went slow enough for you, and that is not an insult at all. That's me in slow motion, and I try to do it as slow as I can. So enjoy your days all, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.